Thumbs up? Got it.
Uh-huh.
Today's daf is Nun Gimel 53 in Masechet Bava Metzia, Perak HaZahav. We are not up to the daf yet. We are at the bottom of Nun Bet Amud Bet, around 8 lines from the bottom, maybe 10 lines. So with the issue that we came up to yesterday that we started discussing, excuse me, is that you have a coin, a sella, that is not worth the sell anymore, right? It's been worn away, it's been burned a little bit. For some reason, it's worth less, let's say a small percentage less. The Mishnah said, although you can't pass it off as a good coin, you can use it to be podeh your maaser sheni. And the opinion we came up with yesterday was Chizkiya's opinion, essentially, that you can be, we think, the Chizkiya is of the opinion that you can be what's called mizalzalina b'maser sheni, meaning that you don't need to have full value. So you have maser sheni, right? The second year and the first year and the fourth year and the fifth year, you take your fruit. Let's say you have, a bushel of grapes, and you're supposed to take 10% of it and bring it up to Yerushalayim. You don't want to bring it up; it's too long. You exchange the value of those grapes for money. So the implication of our mission is that you don't have to be so careful. You can actually take $10 of grapes and put them on $6, so that's possible to do. And that's how you can take a coin that's not worth its full value and use it for its full value. Says the Gemara now, so that's where we're up to. So 10 lines or so from the bottom. Last word on the line is lememra. Lememra, this seems to imply this Savar Chizkiya, the Chizkiya, who was the person we just quoted before, felt the mizalzalina b'maser sheni. You can be cheap, let's say, this may be a good translation, with maaser sheni and the pidyon. However, there's a statement, that's going to seem to contradict that. Ask the Gemara, v'ha'amar Chizkiya. Chizkiya said the following. We're actually going to quote this throughout the rest of today and a little bit tomorrow. Let's say this was probably not a very uncommon problem yet then and even today. You have, you do your maaser sheni, and then you find, another 20 grapes, let's say. So you have another small amount that you have to add as maaser sheni, but it's not worth a pruta, right? And the pruta was sort of the minimum share of money. And the problem if something's not worth a pruta is that there's no way to exchange it. It's not what we call tofes damav. It doesn't grab its value because it's almost insignificant. But although it's almost insignificant, it's still maaser sheni. So how do you take the value of a small amount of food that's not worth a pruta and put that on money to be mechulal for maaser sheni? So what did Chizkiya say? Amar Chizkiya, maaser sheni, if you have fruit of maaser sheni, she'ein bo shaveh pruta, it's not worth the minimum, currency that they had, a pruta. What you should do is, Omer, you should say, who, I want to redeem this fruit. Now remember, if you're the owner, you have to add a fifth, right? Hu v'chumsho, it and its fifth, should be mechulal al ma'ot harishonot. They should be mechulal on the earlier money, meaning last week, I took all of my grapes and I made them maaser sheni on $200 sitting in my garage, right? I'm going to bring up to Yerushalayim. This small amount should be added to that $200. Now, what's the implication? Because, continues Chizkiya, a person can never exactly guess or estimate how much something is worth. And therefore, says Chizkiya, when the first time that you exchanged your large amount of food for money, you added a little bit of extra money, right? Because let's say your food is worth $198. You know that it's not going to be exact. And so you are mechulal onto 200. I'm just using dollars, of course, for what the Mishnah used slaim. So therefore, there's a little bit of extra money there, right? So the money that you put aside actually covered more than your food. There's a little extra there, and you could take this new food that's not a shaveh pruta and add it to that money. But what that implies, as Rashi explains, is that you have to always be nicer to hektish, right? Not hektish, to maaser sheni, to chilul, and add money to it, implying that you can't be cheap with maaser sheni, right? Because if you could have been cheap, then how do you know there's any money left over from the first chilul? So therefore, it seems like Chizkiyahu is saying that you can't do that, that you have to be very careful, make sure that you put all of the money value onto chilul money to bring to Yerushalayim, and there's no space to be mizalzel. Answers the Gemara, you're right. Might be a feb. When we said yesterday that you can use this bad coin for maaser sheni in a good way, it means b'torat yafeh. It means that you can use it as if it was a good coin. So you don't have to say this is a bad coin, even though it's been rubbed away a little bit. but still you can't use the full value, right? Meaning the sela, which is worth 95% of a sela, can only be exchanged for 95% of a sela for Maaser Sheni. The Trey Zili lo mizalzalina ba. You can't do a double negative, basically. I mean, you can't use a bad coin and pretend that it's full value and cheat hektik and cheat Maaser Sheni. You can do one, right? So you can use a coin that's not a really great coin, but you can only use the real value that's currently in that coin. So it doesn't, Yafed does not mean that, again, you get full value. It means you can use it, but you have to use only the current value. Now, Gufa. Let's go back to the statement of Chizkiah, and today this is going to take up our whole daf today. It says Chizkiah, Maaser Sheni she'en bo shava pruta. You've got this situation, which we're going to see was probably not so uncommon. You have a small amount of grain, a small amount of produce, and you can't keep it, right? Because it's Maaser Sheni. You're not going to Yerushalayim for 3 months, or your flight got canceled. So you've got to hold on to it for a while. And so how do you exchange the Maaser, the food, for money? It's not worth a pruta. So Maaser Sheni she'en bo shava pruta. Omer says Chizkiah, what you should say is, Hu v'chumsho, it and the fifth that I'm supposed to add to it, are michulal al ma'ot rishonot. Are chilul, are exchanged for earlier money that I already set aside for Maaser Sheni, because the fishi efshar lo adam tzamtzem otav. Because a person can't be super exact, and therefore there's probably extra value left over in that money. So that was Chizkiah's statement, Meitve. Now we have a question from a Mishnah in Masechet Chala. The Mishnah goes through, and this is again the rest of today's daf, essentially the whole today's daf, some of the halachot of a Maaser Sheni. So says the Mishnah, bottom line, hatruma v'habikurim. If you have things that are truma, which are, remember, the first things you have to give to a kohen, or bikurim, the first fruits that you have to set aside and give to the kohen, these things you're chayavin alehem mita. If a zar, if a non-kohen eats them, you're chayav mita b'dei shamayim, but you're chayav mita. V'chomesh. Now, if you use them unintentionally and you got to pay back, you got to add a chomesh and turn the page to finally nun gimel. Asurim lezarim. Now that seems pretty obvious, right? But anyways, we're going to keep discussing it. They're prohibited to a zar, to a non-kohen, to eat or to use. Vehein nichsei kohen. These are all things that are the property of a kohen, meaning a kohen can use them for anything that they want. They can use it to get married, Rashi explains. They can use them for anything they need. It's not like they're kodesh, but they belong to the kohen. And va'olin be'achadu me'ah, right? Remember, there's all kinds of different ratios of when something is batul, but truma and bikurim are batul 1 in 100. So if you have one little bit of truma that drops into a pan, if there's 100 regular, then that makes it batul. And tu'unim rechitzat yadayim v'harev shemesh. And the person has to be tahar when they eat them, so they have to wash their hands before they eat it. And they also have to, if they're tamei, they have to wait till the sun sets after they go to the mikveh. So these are all halachot. Harei elu b'truma bikurim. These are all halachot that apply to truma and bikurim, which are things that go to a kohen. Ma she'ein kin b'maaser, unlike maaser. Maaser does not have these halachot. Okay, now all of them obviously are details. There's some that make sense and some that don't. But we're going to discuss one of those specific details. What does it mean? Says the Gemara, ma she'ein kin b'maaser. How is maaser not like truma and bikurim? Right? Remember, and so we're now going to focus on the one that's bitul. The truma and bikurim are batel in 100, but maaser is not batel in 100. It's batel berov, we would assume 1 and 2, which is things that are not special. That's usually the way they're batel. You take a majority and it's not there. So lav michlal de maaser batel beruba. That if you take maaser, you have maaser sheni, and you didn't make it chilul yet, and you take your maaser sheni strawberries and you mix them with regular strawberries, and you make a smoothie, as long as there's more regular strawberries than Maaser Sheni strawberries, it's not Maaser Sheni anymore. Okay? That's midoraita. It seems like it's batal berov.
Is that b'diavad or b'hatchila?
So very good question. We'll get to Chulun. We'll talk all about this. Our rule is you never can be mevatel something lichatchila, meaning you can never intentionally do that. But if you do it, it's 100% mutar, according to what we think now. We're not done yet, so don't drink the strawberry smoothie yet. But no, lechatchila, it's totally batel. So says the Gemara, but I don't understand. Imita de Chizkiah, if Chizkiah is correct, right, then there should be another issue, because sure, your smoothie has 30% Maaser Sheni strawberries and 70% Chulin strawberries, and obviously you can't distinguish them, right? But there's another principle that we're going to learn, and we've learned before, that if you have something that's called davar sheyesh lo matirin, something that you can make it mutar, you're never allowed to rely on bitul, right? Let's say something that would tomorrow be mutar. You can't say I'm going to eat it today, right? If you could wait till tomorrow to become mutar. Maaser should never be batel because you don't need to know where the maaser is. Why can't you just say, I know 30% of the strawberries in this are maaser sheni. I'm mechalel these strawberries on $10 that I have in my back in my room, right? So because it's a davar sheyesh lo matirim, it's something that become mutar halachically, it should never be batel, right? Now you might say, well, obviously the case here is where you drop one strawberry in, so it's not a pruta. So there's no way to be mivatel something that's not a pruta, right? But if Chizkiah is correct, says the Gemara now, Amita, the Chizkiah, if Chizkiah is correct, that you can be mevatel maaser sheni, mevatel mechalel maaser sheni that's less than a pruta, havile davar sheyesh lo matirim. The maaser sheni is always something that you can find a way to permit by being mechalel and on other money. The chol davar sheyesh lo matirim. The rule is afilu be'elef lo batel. Even 1 in 1,000 can't be batel because you could just take the step to make the thing mutter, right? So therefore, this Mishnah seems to be going against Chizkiah, right? So that's a problem. Says the Gemara, well, one second. You're making an assumption that you said by Maser that by Truma and Bikurim that it's Batel in 1 in 100, unlike Maser. So you're saying unlike Maser, which is Batel 1 in 2. Maybe what it means to say is unlike Maser, which is not even Batel 1 in 100, exactly for the reason of Chizkiah, right? Dilma, what it's saying is Lo Batel Klal. That Maser is different than Truma because Truma is Batel 1 in 100. Maser is never Batel. Doesn't matter. That's very nice, but if you look at the rest of the list, everything you mentioned was it belongs to a Kohen. You get misa for eating it. You have to go to the mikvah, etc. Those are all things that apply to truma and don't apply to maser. It's a kula, right? Doesn't matter lo matzah amrid hacha. You can't have that logic. The gabe truma, in the list of truma, we're saying things. The chumrei truma katani. We're saying things that are harder, right? That are stricter with truma and not saying things that are kula. And you're saying now truma is bata 1 in 100, unlike maser, which is never bata. Kula de truma lo katani. So remember, that's not really true because if you look at the list, one of the things we mentioned in the list, hakatani, hein nichse kohen, that they belong to the kohen, right? That's not a kula, right? That's saying that the kohen owns them, that he can marry a woman or give him off for possession for other things. So it's not true that we're only saying chumrot. We're also saying things that are kulot or unique. Says so it is possible that what we're saying actually is that truma and bikurim are batel 1 in 100, but maaser is never batel because, as Chizkiah said, even if you have a minuscule amount of maaser sheni, you can be mevatel it on money that you have from before. Says where it's very okay, fair enough, but lo salkadaitach, it doesn't actually add up. The Tanya Behedya, because there's another Braita, maybe not this Mishnah in Chala, but there's another Braita which says specifically Maaser Sheni Batel Beruba, right? Maaser Sheni is Batel Berov, okay? And continues the Braita. This is an important Braita, which we're going to keep going through. Maaser Sheni is Batel and Rov. Ask the Braita, Ube'eza Maaser Sheni Amru. Now, why would Maaser Sheni ever be Batel Berov? Because we have a rule, Davar sheyesh lo matirin, something that you can make permitted, you have to make permitted. You can't rely on bitul. So which Maaser Sheni does rely on bitul? It's a specific case of Maaser she'im bo shaveh pruta, right? It's an amount of Maaser, it's not worth a pruta, so it's difficult. We'll see in Chizkiah whether it's impossible or difficult to be podeh. And continues the Braita in this interesting case, shenichnas Yerushalayim v'yatza, that you actually went up to Israel, or you lived in Israel, you went to Yerushalayim with your Maser, and then you left Yerushalayim. Okay, now we'll see. We're going to get through why that's relevant in the next lines. But ask the Gemara before we get to that part, Im ita, the Chizkiah of Chizkiah is correct, that you can be mevatel less than a pruta of Maser Sheni, so why is it batel? The Avid Leila de Chizkiah. Why don't you do what Chizkiah said, unichalalel ma'ot rishonot? You can just say, look, I previously have other money that I used for Maser Sheni. Let me put this small amount of Maser Sheni on that other money. Says the Gemara, well, the low park. Obviously, the case could be where you didn't have anything else, right? You're a very small farmer. You grow 2 strawberries, right? So you don't have anything else. You don't have other existing money, right? You're making an assumption that this guy had, fields and fields of food, and he already has hundreds of dollars sitting around that are Maser Sheni. Maybe you have nothing else. It's Maser Sheni. And that's where there's no way to be Mechalel it. because even Chizkiah said you can only rely on something that was previously done, and therefore you can rely on Bitul Berov. Says the Gemara, well, okay, that's true, but why don't you make a solution? V'nit naiti maaser to itlay, find more maaser, meaning wait till you get more produce, unitzaref, and you could combine something with it, right? So basically, take other maaser that is worth, say, that amount, that's half a pruta, and mix it together. Answers the Gemara, well, it won't combine, because the new maaser is chayav in pidyon midoraita. The old maaser is already mixed in the smoothie with the strawberries. So it is only midoraita, it's batel. It's only midorabanan who say that you can't be mevatel, something that you can fix, that you need to still take maaser. And doraita, drabanan, lo mitzdarfi. And therefore you can't combine something new, which is chayav midoraita, with something that you have already mixed unintentionally, perhaps, which is chayav only drabanan. So therefore there's no way to add value to this. Answers the Gemara, okay, but bring demai. Remember what demai is? Demai is when you buy produce from an am haaretz, and you have to assume that they didn't take truma and maaser. The Gemara says that they probably did. So it's only midrabanan that you have to take maaser again. So basically, you're buying new food, right? That is chayiv and maaser midrabanan. Take it and add it to your smoothie, which is a mixture that's chayiv and maaser drabanan. Says the Gemara, okay, that's true, but we don't really encourage someone to get demai because we're afraid that a person is going to not remember. How do I fix this smoothie? I got to go to the store and buy demai. You're going to go to the store and you're going to buy things that are tevel, that are totally not required. Dilma ati latuye vadai. You're going to, not mistakenly, but you're not going to remember the nuances, and you're going to buy produce that is chayiv and maaser midoraita, right? So therefore, we don't really want to make this kind of solution where we say, go to the store and buy a specific kind of thing that's only demai. We basically just say it's a bad situation, it's hard to fix it, and it's batel berov. So there's no real solution. Ask the Gemara, well, I got a better solution now. Naiti shtei prutot. Why don't you do this? Why don't you bring 2 prutot now, okay? And so 2 new coins, basically. Now you can't necessarily take your strawberries and put them on one of the coins because it's too small of an amount, right? And a small amount is not tofes, it doesn't capture its value. But what you can do is the following. Take 2 prutot and take new grain that's chayiv min deoraita, unechalel alayu maaser bepruto mechza. Take 1.5 prutot value of maaser and put it on these 2 coins, right? And so basically you're setting up a situation where you have a coin that has space left to add more maaser to it, right? So if you took 1 coin and put 1 pruta, then there's nothing left. But take 2 prutot of coins, 1.5 prutot of produce, put that on the 2 coins. The 2 coins are now maaser sheni, and you can add unichalel, read inside, nichalel alayo maaser bepruta mechza, transfer the maaser for a value of 1.5 pruta, unichalel hayal hach yitera, and then say my smoothie should be chulal on the other half of the pruta, right, of that extra pruta. Says the Gemara, well, that's not the way it works. Mi savrit pruta mechza tafsa shtei prutot. Do you really think that if you take a pruta and a half of grain or a pruta and a half of food, you can then change it and put its kedusha onto 2 prutot? No, what would happen would be pruta tafsa pruta. 1 pruta of grain or value would capture and would replace the kedusha for 1 pruta, and chatzi pruta lo tafsa. But then the other pruta would not be tofes, and it would basically be a doraita chiyav, something you haven't dealt with. The mixture you have is a drabanan. How do havili doraita drabanan, a doraita drabanan lo mitzdarfi? So you basically keep getting stuck because you basically use 2 prutot. 1 pruta is full value. The other pruta, you can't be mechalel half a pruta onto a pruta, because remember, half a pruta will never capture its value. So you're still stuck. This is where, well, let's get a bigger coin.
But what didn't we say earlier that we don't know the exact value? And if you had 98, you can say you can put it on 100, for instance. So therefore, this is a little bit less than that. We can say we don't, so there's something left over. We said that at the beginning of this year.
So I'll read the next line, which will make that all clear. It's a good question. The next line clarifies that. Ask the Gemara, you can solve it with basically saying what you're saying, which is that you can bring an isar, or you can bring a bigger coin, 90 isar, which is what we talked about earlier. Take an isar is 8 prutot, right? So let's say you have a pruta and a half of grain or 5 prutot of grain. You can take that and put it onto an isar. Basically, the whole coin then is captured as ma'ot maaser sheni. And there'll be 3 prutot left behind, let's say, or whatever number you pick, or 96 or some number. So the challenge with prutot is that each individual pruta has to capture its value. And if there's only 1.5, you capture one and the other half is stuck. But essentially, your question is, why don't you just bring, like we talked about earlier in the year, a larger coin, right? And put some grain onto it, not fill the whole value, and that would be fine. So you bring an isar, you can put, isar again is 8 prutot, put 3 prutot of food on the isar. You got plenty of money left behind. And then say, like Chizkiah said, whatever in that smoothie is maser sheni should be on this isar, right? And just more, that's
But wait, how do you even come to this situation? Aren't we talking about a gentleman who has nothing else? He can't that was the beginning premise. That's all he has is this small amount. And we came up, we said, what, how can he get more food to put on? He doesn't have any more food.
right.
Is he taking this from his neighbor?
So I mean, I obviously gave the case. We don't have exact knowledge of how poor this person might be. But I guess our question is, can he wait a little bit? Take time, over a short period of time, maybe you'll grow more stuff and you'll have more money. But I agree, if someone has nothing, we'll get to it. We're going to keep getting that case. But this is part of the complexity because the answer to this Issar is it's really would not be a challenge. But we're worried, Dilma atila tuye prutot. We're worried that a person's not going to realize exactly what's going on. You're getting into a very complicated situation, right? And the person is going to come to bring a pruta, maybe because what you're saying, I've never seen anyone who said it, but maybe because of what you're saying, he's obviously not a wealthy person, has very limited resources. So maybe he won't have a full isar and he'll come to use prutot and he'll remember the halacha I learned was that you can take, money that's extra and you can be mechalel, which you don't know, but not realize all the parameters. And therefore they made a takana that it's a bad idea to do this to begin with. And the consequence is that you can just drink the smoothie. It's not a problem, right? Because we don't want you to start making trouble. Now, remember, it's only drabanan, because bidoraita, it is batel. It's midrabanan, they made this takana that anything that is davar sheyesh lo matirin, anything that could become mutar through another action is not batel. But this case, they didn't make that ruling.
So
That's
the other
the answer I have.
question is, where do we say that he made the smoothie? If he only had a small amount that he wanted to redeem and he couldn't, then he should say,
No, no,
well, he make a smoothie out of it? He shouldn't have done that in the first place.
Again, don't go into too much. But the case of the Breita, just to be clear, is it's Batel Baruba. It was mixed together. Again, you asked this earlier. We definitely would not tell a person to mix something in order to make it mutar. We don't ask, right? We're not ma'arvin. We don't mix things to be mevatel lechatchila. But that's the story. That's the situation we started with in the Breita. A person mixed maaser sheni with non-maaser sheni, right? And the Breita said it's batel barov. The Breita then continued and said, when is it batel barov? Only if the amount that you mixed was ein bo shaveh pruta, right? Because if it was worth a pruta, then there's no bittul. Because then you could just say, there's 5 prutot of strawberries in my salad. I'm going to be mechalel that on money that I have in my house, right? And if you don't have any money, you're stuck because it's not our fault that you don't have any money, right? But what we're saying here in this case is that it was less than a shavet pruta, and therefore it's impossible to do it. Ask the Gemara according to Chizkiah, there are strategies, and we answer that there are strategies to get rid of or to exchange the value of Maser Sheni less than pruta, but they all rely on very specific circumstances, and we're afraid that you don't have that exact circumstance, and you're going to lead to doing something wrong. That's the sort of short version of that. Ask the Gemara now, 3 lines on the bottom. The second case of the Braita was when else is Maaser Sheni batel? If you take your Maaser Sheni, and we think it means money at this point. Well, actually, it doesn't have to be money. I take it back. It can mean, let's say, produce at this point. You take your Maaser Sheni into Yerushalayim, and then you leave Yerushalayim. So now, once you left Yerushalayim, you're stuck because you no longer can be poda Maaser Sheni once you've gone to Yerushalayim. You're only allowed to be poda Maaser Sheni outside of Yerushalayim. And once you go into Yerushalayim with the grapes, let's say, right? And then let's say you're called away, you got to leave, and the next flight back or the next trip back is going to be a month later. So now you're stuck because you've got peyrot, you have food of Maaser Sheni. You took it to Yerushalayim once, you didn't eat it, you didn't use it there. You left Yerushalayim, but you're not going to go back in time to eat it. You're not allowed to turn that into money at this point. And so therefore, you're really stuck. And that's where we said it's batel, because there's no way to redeem it. There's no way to exchange it for money. Okay? Says the Gemara of Shenichnas Yerushalayim v'yatsa, amai, but I don't get it. Why can't you just go back to Yerushalayim? What do you mean? It's, you can be batel because you're not there. Go back to Yerushalayim. That's the responsibility. Answers Gemara, no, it's b'shin nitzma. It's because the things became tamei. And so therefore, once they become tamei, then you've got a whole nother problem, right? Because once you have your maaser sheni that has become tamei, we don't actually want you to bring it back into your line because it's tamei, right? So therefore, you can't, even though, so again, the case here is where you mixed it up, right? But the whole thing became tamei, and therefore you can't eat it. You're tahar. Says the Gemara to Amar Reb Elazar. I'm sorry. But why? There's an opinion, 2 lines on the bottom, that you can go back to Yerushalayim and you can take it even though it's tamei and still redeem it. Amar Reb Elazar. Reb Elazar was quoted as saying, bottom line, minayin the maaser sheni shenitma. How do you know that if you have maaser sheni that became tamei, shepodinoto, that you still can redeem it, afilu b'Yushalayim, even when you go back, or especially when you go back to Yerushalayim, shenemar, because the pasuk says, turn the page, right? Ki lo tuchal seito, you weren't able to have it, right? That's how we translate this pasuk. You can't eat it you're unable to, not to eat it, you're unable to carry it. And ein seit doesn't just mean carrying it, it also means you're unable to eat it. Ein seit ala achila. Shnemar, as the pasuk says by Yosef, yisa mas'et meit panav. They took the mas'et, which we in the pasuk context means they were sitting around eating a meal. They took a meal from in front of him. So basically, what the Torah is telling you is that as long as there's inability to eat it, right, or an inability to carry it, but in this case, there's inability to eat it because it's tamei and you can't eat it betumah. So then you're allowed to be poded. So why don't you just take this back to Yerushalayim? Again, you have this smoothie. It's a mixture. You know some of it's maaser sheni, some of it's not. The whole thing is tamei, so you can't eat it, but you're allowed to be poded because you're not allowed to eat it. Ella, the case. So why are you allowed to
How do
rely
you
on?
explain Rashi? He said, "V'aleo im tarovet v'yachluno v'Yerushalayim." He said, Rashi saying you can eat it there.
Right, but you can't eat it because you're tamei. So that's the problem. So the question is, what do you do with it? So the Breita says, well, sorry, you can't be podeh because it's tamei, but we're saying we're relying on bitul. So answers the Gemara, what you should do is the following. Ella, the case, not what you should do. What the case is referring to is bilakuach bekesef maaser sheni. The case here is not where you actually took maaser sheni, you took produce, and you brought them to Yerushalayim, and then they became tamei, and then you left. Well, the case we've been talking about. It's talking about where you actually took your produce, you exchanged it for money, you took that money to Yerushalayim, you used the money in Yerushalayim to repurchase food. Remember, that's the case, and then you left Yerushalayim. And then it became mixed. Ella, the case is b'lekuach bekesef maaser sheni. It's talking about a case where you bought something with kesef maaser sheni. Says, so what? Why is that a problem? Lekuach bekesef maaser nami lifrike. Why can't you still redeem it? Why is it a problem to redeem it if it was something that was purchased with money of maaser sheni? Did Tnan, we have a mission that says, halakuach bekesef maaser sheni shenitma. If you bought something with money of maaser sheni, and then it became tamei, says the Mishnah, then you should be yipadeh. You should go again and redeem it a second time, get money. The money, of course, is tahar, and use the money to buy new things. It says, well, that's the Tanakama. But Rabbi Yehuda says, yikaver. Rabbi Yehuda's opinion is that once you have something that was bought with money of maaser sheni that became tamei, there's no fix. You can't re-redeem it, and you can't eat it. So what do? You bury it. You got to throw it away. So that's the case where the Breita said, since you otherwise have to throw it away, but it's mixed in something else and it's a minority, it is batel barov. So that's the final case. Well, that's not really, but the final case for this minute, where the Breita was saying that things of maaser sheni that are batel barov is a case where you took it to Yerushalayim, you then left Yerushalayim, right? But it wasn't food that you initially brought; it was money and that you bought food with, and that food then left Yerushalayim, then it became tamei. You therefore have to bury it according to Rabbi Yehuda, and therefore it is batel barov.
But you've already pulled there this on the money, right? And you use the money to buy other food. So
Yeah,
what?
you can redeem, you can
I said
re-exchange.
you've already this product mecholal on the kesef, and the kesef you went to Yerushalayim with the kesef and bought some other food.
Yeah,
right?
but the kedusha, sorry, so the kedusha follows along the trail, right? So when you bought other food, that other food got the kedusha. So now it keeps moving along, right? So you had original produce, it moved to the money, it moves to the next food. If you read, if according to the chachamim, that you can re-redeem it, it goes back. The money keeps the kedusha keeps following the purchase.
But the food, why would you redeem it? The food is gone, basically, right? I mean,
No,
where's the food?
it's in there. It's a mixture in your smoothie. It's not gone. It's just tamei. So says the Gemara, Irab Yehuda. But if you're going according to Rabbi Yehuda, that you basically, when you have money that was used for Maaser Sheni, that was bought, produce that was purchased from money of Maaser Sheni, that became Tameh, you have to destroy it. So what does it have to do with Yatzah? My area Yatzah, what does it have to do with leaving Yerushalayim? Right? Rabbi Yehuda's halacha was that when you have Maaser Sheni that becomes Tameh, you got to throw it away. So it's nothing with leaving Yerushalayim. I feel Allah Yatzanami. Even if you don't leave Yerushalayim, it became Tameh, and according to Rabbi Yehuda, produce that was bought with Maaser Sheni money that became Tameh, you have to destroy. Ella, you're right. Forget about the Tameh. Tameh part we can remove now. La'olam bit tahar. The case here is that the food is tahar. So now, you took this food to Yerushalayim, right? It's Maaser Sheni. Once it enters Yerushalayim, it no longer can be exchanged for money. Okay? Says the Braita, therefore, if you can't exchange it for money, it was mixed in with something that's not Maaser Sheni, you're allowed to be Batel Barov. We asked on Amud Aleph, why are you Batel Barov? Walk back to Yerushalayim and eat it in Yerushalayim, right? The fact that you left doesn't mean you can't go back. Answers the Gemara, because really what the case here is, Ma Yatza Dinafol Mechitzot. I'm talking about a situation where you left, not because you left, Yerushalayim left, meaning there was a war and the walls of Jerusalem fell down. So pretty common case, right? So that basically you were in a really sad situation where you have money, Maaser Sheni, and the city unfortunately doesn't exist anymore. And since the city doesn't exist anymore, you are not able to eat your Maaser Sheni because it's as if you took it out of the city. And the only way to eat it now is to be Mevatel Barov. Says the Gemara, 1 second. This is now you're introducing this whole crazy case. Rava, Hamar Rava, but Rava explained that mechitza le'achol, to say that a mechitza, halacha mechitza, that you can eat produce of maaser sheni inside, meaning that once it goes into that place, you're allowed to eat truma there, not truma, maaser. That's doraita, right? You need to have a fence. But mechitza liklot, a mechitza to basically liklot means to capture, meaning to retain the status, to say something that has left, basically, it remains in this space. That's only midrabanan, right? Meaning that the halacha that the walls of the city are there in order to bring together that all Maaser Sheni inside the space is considered to be in Yerushalayim is only midrabanan, meaning midoraita. Even if the walls fall down, it's still considered Yerushalayim. Right? They only said midrabanan. Once they fall down, you should treat it like it's not. And ask the Gemara, but when the Rabbanan said that gzeira, you would presume it's ki itnu mechitzot. It's only when there are mechitzot. The halacha, that you have to eat maaser, that once it has left Yerushalayim, it can no longer be podeh, is midrabanan. But when the Rabbanan were gazer, that's only ki itnu mechitzot. It's only in a situation where there are boundaries. So in the situation where there are boundaries, the Chachamim made a takana that if you have Maaser Sheni and it's outside those boundaries, you can no longer redeem it. But they probably would not have made that gezerah in this super unusual circumstance and sad circumstance, where there's no longer walls around Jerusalem. Answers the word, well, you never know that. Lo plug Rabbanan, bein itnu mechitzot, bein letnu mechitzot, they did not make a distinction. And so basically the Chachamim made a takana that once your Maaser Sheni has left Yerushalayim, you're no longer allowed to redeem it. In this sad circumstance, there's no way to go back to Yerushalayim because the walls are breached. And therefore, because you have a small amount of Maaser Sheni that you can no longer redeem because it's essentially outside of the Yerushalayim, and you can never go back to Yerushalayim in this case, therefore they allowed it to be Batel Barov. So that is how you understand the two cases in the Braita. One is where there's not a pruta, and one is where there is a pruta or many amounts, but unfortunately it was taken out of Yerushalayim and it can never be brought back in because the walls of Yerushalayim no longer are extant. Rav Huna Bar Yehuda said, I don't know if it's simpler, but I have another explanation. We are, around 12 or so lines from the top. in the middle of a line. Rav Huna bar Yehuda said in the name of Rav Sheshet, you read the Breitas two different cases. One where you have Maaser Sheni that's not a pruta, and one where you left Yerushalayim and somehow you can't go back. But reality is it's one case, Chada Katani. In fact, it's one case that the Breita is talking about. When is Maaser Sheni Batel Berov? If it's Maaser Sheni She'en Bo Shaveh Pruta, did I say it? Yeah, it's Maaser Sheni She'en Bo Shaveh Pruta Shenichnas the Yerushalayim v'yatza. Right? The case is when you have Maaser Sheni that's less than a pruta, it went into Yerushalayim and you then took it out of Yerushalayim. So now there's no way to fix it because you can't redeem it anymore. Ask where. So I know you can't redeem it anymore, but you can at least walk back into the city and eat it. Amai nahadar nehilei v'nechlei. You can go back to the city and you can eat the Maaser Sheni. Again, the case has to be the nafal mechitzot. Right? The case has to be where there are no mechitzot. Asking the same question we asked before. So what? Nifrike. Why can't you still redeem it even though there are no mechitzot? Didn't Rava say that mechitza lechol doraita, mechitza liklot rabbanan? That mechitza to eat the food is doraita, but to capture it, meaning that anything outside of Yerushalayim cannot be redeemed, is only midrabanan. And presumably, when the Rabbanan made that gzeirah, it's only if there are barriers. But Rabbanan. The answer is lo plug Rabbanan. Rabbanan did not make a distinction between a case where the walls are up or the walls are down. Ask the Gemara now. You're probably wondering what in the world did we just add with this answer, right? What did Rav Huna bar Yehuda and Rav Sheshet add by combining the two cases? So ask the Gemara, Ihachi, if it's like Rav Huna bar Yeshua, Rav Huna bar Yehuda, Amar Rav Sheshet, sorry, why my area Ein Bo Shaveh Pruta, right? Why would you say it's one case where it's Ein Bo Shaveh Pruta and the walls fell down, right? Afilu Yesh Bo Nami, right? As we explained earlier, even if it's worth 20 prutot, if you bring it into Yerushalayim and then you leave Yerushalayim, you're not allowed to redeem it ever. And we're talking about a case where you can't go back because the walls fell down. So what does it have to be a specific case for Ein Bo Shaveh Pruta? Says the Gemara, Lomi Boy Kamer. The Breita is telling you a sort of added case. Not only Lomi Boy, not only Lomi Boy Yeshbo, not only a case where the amount of food of Maaser Sheni is more than a pruta. Dekolten le mechitzot. That when you went the first time into Yerushalayim, basically, the walls of Yerushalayim captured it, and now its status of being Maaser Sheni that went into Yerushalayim, and once you leave, you can never redeem it. Aval Einbo, but if let's say there was a tiny amount, you might think, look, it was one strawberry. Ema lo koltule mechitzot. Maybe Yerushalayim never captured it, and now I could still redeem it, even though I left Yerushalayim. Kamash Malan, that you cannot redeem it because once you were in Yerushalayim, its status is, according to Midrabanan at least, that you can never redeem it again outside of Yerushalayim, and you can't go back to Yerushalayim now because in this specific case, the walls fell down, and therefore, the only thing to rely on is bitol, and that's the case where they allowed you to be mevatel, perot of Maaser Sheni. Again, very far-fetched case, but Gemara loves far-fetched cases. Tanu Rabbanan. Now, while we're on the topic, and we're going to continue today and the rest of today and a lot of, I think most of tomorrow, all tomorrow, with the question of Maaser Sheni. So let's continue. We'll see why it's relevant from what we quoted before. We are at Tanu Rabbanan, which is around 15 or so lines from the bottom at the Pasuk. So the Pasuk says the following. Im Ga'al Yigael Ish, right? Mimasro. If a person redeems their Maaser, okay? That's a weird Pasuk. What does it mean, mi Maasro? What does it mean? They can redeem some of their Maaser from their Maaser. Says the Breita, that means mi Maasro velo kol Masro. A person can redeem some of their cases of Maaser, but there are times where you cannot redeem your Maaser. When can you not redeem your Maaser? Prat leMaaser Sheni she'en bo shaveh pruta. If you've got Maaser Sheni that's not worth a pruta, there's no way, right? We'll see. We're going to continue. Don't stop yet. But there's no way, let's say, to redeem the kedusha from that Maaser Sheni onto money because it's not worth a pruta. Now, itma. Now, there's a machloket amoraim how to understand this Breita. Reb Ami said the Breita is referring to Einbo. Let's say your Maaser Sheni does not have a pruta. You have, let's say, one strawberry. I'm going to keep using that example. Strawberries might not be chayav in Maaser Sheni, but let's take it for argument's sake. Let's say you have, they're almost certainly not chayav. But anyways, let's say you have one grape, pick a better example, Ein bo, it doesn't have a shavet pruta, and therefore there's no way to redeem it. Rav Asi says, no, that's not what the Braita is telling you. The Braita is telling you, ein bechumsho. It means if the chomesh, the fifth, doesn't have a pruta, so your maaser might be worth 3 prutot, but a fifth of that is not a pruta, and therefore, since the fifth is not a pruta, you also can't redeem it. Because in order to redeem it, you don't just need the essence to be a pruta, you need the fifth to be a pruta. And Rabbi Yochanan said, and Rabbi Yochanan and Rish Lakish had the same opinions. Rabbi Yochanan and Omer, ein bo. What the Braita is saying is that the object doesn't have a pruta, and Rabbi Shimon ben Lakish, Rish Lakish says ein bechumsho. The Braita is telling you even if its chomesh is its fifth is not a pruta, then you can't redeem it. So not only do you need to have a pruta in the object, you need to have a pruta in the fifth. So meaning, in essence, that in order for Maser Sheni to be redeemable, it has to be worth 4 or 5 prutot, right? So that is the Braita. Now, ask the Gemara from the case we had earlier today. Meitve. It said in our Braita, which you quoted before, Maser, actually we quoted a version of this, but not this one. Maser Sheni she'en bo shaveh pruta. If you have Maser Sheni that's not worth a pruta, now again, we don't yet know if it's not worth a pruta or if it's chomesh is not worth a pruta, right? But says the Braita, Maser Sheni, it's not worth a pruta. Dayo sheyomar hu v'chumsho mechulal amaot rishonot. It's okay. It's enough to say that its money and its chomesh should be mechulal on money that I already set aside for other maaser sheni. Remember, we've been talking about this case the whole time. Now, says the Gemara, I don't understand. Bishlam lamanda amar, I don't not understand. It's pretty clear. The bishlam lamanda amar ein bechumsho. If the case here is where the chomesh does not have a pruta, right? But the maaser sheni is a pruta, then I understand the word dayo. Dayo is a word, it's enough, right? Haina diktani dayo. It's saying it's enough, meaning what's enough? The avagav de bididei itzbei, right? The truma, the maaser sheni itself is worth 4 prutot. So there's no problem exchanging that for money. But kivan de bechum shaleka, but the fifth that you have to add on doesn't have a pruta, right? A fifth of 4 is not quite a pruta. Shop here. So therefore, what you did was okay. And basically what we're saying is it's okay because the principle is okay, and therefore it's fine to add the chomesh. Elamanda amar ein bo, but if you're saying that we're talking about a case where even the Maser Sheni itself doesn't have a chomesh, doesn't have a pruta, sorry, my dayo, right? What does the word dayo mean? It's okay, right? What we should be saying is this is the way you do it. Meaning there's no concession that it was okay to do the principle. The chomesh is not a fifth, but that chomesh is not a pruta, but that's okay, right? Here we're basically saying none of it is a pruta. So what do you mean it's dayo? It's enough to do this. This is the only way to do it. Kasha, in fact, we don't really have a good explanation according to those opinions for the language in the Braita, but we don't prove that they're wrong. And so we are going to stop here, but we have at this point a machloket about whether not only does the maaser sheni itself have to be worth a pruta in order to go on money, but does the chomesh, which is a fifth that we add to it, have to also be worth a pruta because the fifth is its own thing, right? And its own thing means that it has to be tofes its value. And according to one opinion, Rabbi Yochanan's opinion in the Braita, it has to be worth a chomesh as well, a pruta as well. And according to the other opinion, it does not have to be.
But why not use the same arguments above that we discussed? These are various technical things to include that part, the fifth, that's not a sheva pruta, whether you eat it, where you mix it up, it's bit of barov, or you exchange it for someone else, or bring in other money, use the same arguments.
You meaning
we discussed above the various technical things that one could do. The Rabbanan don't want to, but you could, so why not use it here for the Chumash?
You mean sorry, so I'm not sure I'm clear. So what the Braita is saying is that it's okay to do this. The question is, when is it okay to do this? So according to one opinion, it's only okay to rely on less than a pruta for the chomesh if the principle is more than a pruta, right? So then since the principle already is enough, you can add on the chomesh even though it's less than a pruta. That's where it's okay to do that. But according to that opinion, if the principle was not a chomesh, then you would have no solution because the whole value of this tiny amount of maaser sheni is less than a pruta. There's no way to sort of add its value to something that previously existed. It's considered insignificant. But according to other opinions, that's enough. It's not considered insignificant. As long as you have previous money of Maaser Sheni, you can add this chilul of Maaser Sheni onto that previous money. What we're going to see tomorrow, I'll just give you a quick
Same thing with the Chumash.
up to the Chumash.
Right.
So we're going to see tomorrow, and this actually gets us into the whole next stuff, which is what is a Chumash equal, right? Again, it's not really a Bava Metzia sugya, but we're sort of getting into this by the way. But remember, we've talked about this many, many times. This is one of the key sugya tomorrow, which is how do you calculate a Chumash, right? Chumash sounds like a fifth. As most of us probably already know, we generally view a Chumash as being a fourth, right? Not a fifth. Because we think of a Chumash as being a fifth of the total value, meaning you have 4 portions, you add another quarter, and so you have 5 quarters, and one of those 5 quarters was your Chumash. So tomorrow we'll discuss that. It's called Chumsha Milagav or Chumsha Milabar. And I'll leave you there. I hope everyone has a Chag Kasher v'Sameach. We're going to do it. I don't know who's going to be here, but for those who are here in Riverdale in person, please join us an hour before Mincha at HIR on the first and second day of Pesach.
Thank you, Eli.
Have a safe trip, Miriam.
Thank you. Chag Kasher v'Sameach.
Chag Sameach.
Sameach, Robert, where are you for Yom Tif? You're home?
We're going to the Hudson Valley Resort, upstate New York.
Oh, wow. Enjoy.
Oh, very nice. My neighbors are going to.
Okay.
Tell them to look for us, or tell us their names.
All right.
Shavua Tov, all.
Shavua tov. Bye.